I'm going to call the regular meeting for February 26, 2014 to order and ask that you all rise and join in the singing of our national anthem. I'm sure it's loud. Director, you want to proceed with roll call?
Monsapel. Buckland.
Present.
Trustee Kartner.
Present.
Trustee Garrow, regrets, may be calling in. Trustee McPherson.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice McDonald.
Present.
First Vice McMillan.
Present.
Trustee McRae.
Present.
Chair Petersma.
Present.
Trustee Richards, regrets. Trustee Swan, regrets. Student Trustee Tyler Harbers.
Present.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items. Trustee McMillan, Trustee McRae.
I'm in favor.
So you're not able to vote again? Everybody's joined the meeting, right?
I'm still trying to.
Okay, all in favor then? Any declarations of conflict of interest? I have a motion to move into committee of the whole. Trustee Kartner and Trustee McPherson. Okay, that passes. Now move on to our presentations tonight and invite David Coombs to introduce Commonwealth Public School. Oh, you will. Sorry, Val. Val, you'll introduce.
Chair and trustees, it's with pleasure that I introduce you this evening on behalf of David Coombs, Deborah Skelton, who's the principal of Commonwealth Public School here in Brockville, and she will be presenting her school audit report from a few weeks ago that David Coombs and his team conducted at their school. So welcome, Deborah.
Thank you. Commonwealth Public School report to the Board of Trustees for February 26, 2014. First, looking at our school demographics. Commonwealth Public School is an urban school with a population of 126 students located in the heart of Brockville, specifically on Pearl Street. We offer a full-day kindergarten program that is well established through to grade 6. We also have a core French program. 3% of our students are English language learners. 34% of our students have special education needs, and that would consist of students on individual education plans and those students that are identified. There is a transient nature to our student population. Our grade 6 cohort 2012 represents 42% of grade 3 2009 cohort. In looking at the critical success factors and our school success plan, the critical success factors are on the left-hand side of the page. They involve communication, resources, educational programs, and wellness through the Upper Canada District School Board. On the right are Commonwealth's 3 goals, and as you can see that they are well linked and have been well thought out. Our first goal at Commonwealth is to create a positive and supportive school culture based on the character virtues. Our goal is to have 100% of our staff and students feel they are in a safe and caring environment. Our second goal is to have 90% of all our students reading at grade level, to have 100% of our students improve their writing every term, to have 90% of our students communicating and explaining their process when problem solving in math. And our third goal is to engage our parents and extended school community and community partners to support our students. So what is our current state? At Commonwealth, we are a welcoming community school and the hub of the neighborhood. We house the Ontario Early Years Centre here in Brockville. We also have the YMCA after-school program that is available to our students at no charge twice a week. We have school-based counseling that is offered through the CAS. Our character education program is visible throughout the school, and it is endorsed by all our staff. Our full-day kindergarten program is well established. It's in its 4th year. It's a play-based curriculum program that is very much embraced by our staff. Volunteers and community agencies play a large role in serving student needs at Commonwealth. And students feel their teachers care about them, and most at Commonwealth feel safe at school. Staff care about the well-being of students. Individuals work hard to provide opportunities and meet student needs. We have many clubs and many sports activities and opportunities for our students that take place over the lunch hour, during recess and after school. Parents believe their children are doing well at Commonwealth. Children are happy, feel safe, and their learning needs are met with high quality instruction. Communication at Commonwealth with parents has greatly improved this year with the use of social media. So most classroom teachers have a Facebook page or a Weebly page, and our school Facebook page has been enhanced also. So in looking at parent voice, we surveyed our parent community and we had a very good response. 94% of our parents report their child likes school. 94% of our parents feel their child is safe at school. 95% believe their child is making good progress. And importantly, 98% of our parents believe the instruction is of high quality. In looking at areas of improvement, we've identified 3 areas. student voice and critical thinking, mathematics, and parental engagement. First, in looking at student voice and critical thinking, the full-day kindergarten principles need to continue to permeate to higher primary and junior grades. And we need to continue to focus on how wonder and inquiry can drive instructional practices and inform practice in the classroom. Next, in the area of mathematics, we've noted that there's been a dip in EQAO between grades 3 and 6, especially in the area of mathematics. And we need to work hard to continue to focus on junior achievement. In terms of parental engagement, we need to engage a greater number of parents, especially new parents, parents of children in full-day kindergarten, to participate in the educational journey of their children. So, in looking at our grade 3 student achievement scores over the past 4 years, in blue is 2009 and 10, in brown 2010-11, and 2011 and 12 is green, and 2012 and 13 is purple. So as you can see, we have very strong reading, writing, and math scores in grade 3, and they would be above the provincial average and above our board average. In looking at our grade 6 student achievement scores for the past 3 years, blue being 2010-11, 2011, 2012 in brown, and 2012-13 in green for reading, writing, and math. And what I'd like to bring your attention to is that 41% of our 2012-13 grade 6 cohort were not at Commonwealth in grade 3. This is an important slide, the 3-year average EQAO achievement at Commonwealth. So in looking at the 3-year average, blue are the averages from 2007 to 2010, and brown being the averages from 2010 to 2013. So in looking at our grade 3 test scores in reading, writing, and math, you can see a very strong trajectory. We're moving definitely forward in all areas. For grade 6, we see progress in reading and particularly writing, but our grade 6 math scores would be representative of what perhaps we're seeing across the province. So what is our desired state at Commonwealth? Well, junior achievement scores need to improve in all areas, especially in the area of math. And our math instruction needs to focus on process skills, reasoning, problem solving, and exploring, as well as looking at computational skills. We need to continue to focus on the 90% graduation rate and the 100% satisfaction rate through close monitoring of all our students, especially considering the transient nature of our school community. Data needs to drive all our instruction. All instruction needs to be focused on engaging all our learners. We need to continue to fully document and use student thinking to inform our practice by listening to student voice. So in conclusion, this is the Commonwealth team, and we are a very caring and committed team, and we endeavor to always put our students first and strive for instructional excellence. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions, trustees? Trustee McRae?
Deborah, for a very informative report. I have a couple of questions, if I may, through you, Chair. In the first report that we received, there's a comment on page 2 that says, "The old school way not understanding, feel we are always defending." Can you elaborate on that? It's on the first
Go
report.
ahead, Mr. Coombs.
Thank you, through you, Mr.
Lieutenant
Chair.
Coombs, sorry.
Yes, that was a comment made by a staff member who felt that Commonwealth in past years has had, I guess, a bit of a bad reputation in Brockville, that somehow students were not achieving academically to the standard of other schools, and felt that this was no longer the case, and that it was not the case beforehand, and had made huge gains. There was also a comment regarding communication, saying how can we as a staff communicate better with our community to let them know what the great things that Commonwealth has to offer, because clearly this is a staff that's very proud of the accomplishments of their that they've managed to attain, and are certainly excited about the future.
And through you, Chair, my second question. A common thread that seems to run through all of these reports is how do we engage parents right from the beginning to participate in the educational journey? So I guess my question is, what is the magic recipe? Like, how do we do that?
Anybody got that magic recipe?
Marketing.
Before I go to David? All right, David, you give a shot.
First of all, that's the million-dollar question. We have many schools where the parents want to come out and help out and want to be involved in cooking hot dogs, going on class trips, helping with the ski club. But a lot of parents, and we hear this from all the surveys, the surveys that we've done with parents, surveys that the associations across the province, they really don't want to be involved in governance. They really have, in many of our places, they've said, you know, you're the principal, we'll do all these things, but to come here and be a part of sort of what we do appears to not interest them. And I think that with the really talented principals who have a great sense of finesse, they tap people on the shoulder and really say, I need you here, and you'll make a great contribution. People want the invitation, and in many cases need the invitation to come. And I think what has to happen is that they really have to be challenged to go deeper into what Deborah was presenting. What do these math scores mean, and what do they mean, and how can we support our kids? And once the parents find a role and their voice, they're involved. But it's the beginning, the very, very beginning. They're a bit shy of this whole aspect of governance.
Trustee McMillan, First Vice McMillan.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm trying to stay off the fine line, obviously, that I'm involved in here, because you don't spend more than half your career in one particular school and not have it dear to your heart. So I'm not going to go down that road, but I was worried, Trustee McCrae, that comment was me, and I made it. And I think it wasn't me, but I could have easily said it when I was teaching there. My question is this. Commonwealth School is a school that is very transient, and you've made reference to your test scores with the grade 3s, and you have 42% different kids doing the test in grade 6. Last board meeting, we talked about some of the issues that we have with our schools bringing in students from other areas, other boards, other boards around us. That obviously poses an obstacle, but I'm pleased to see that you're not looking at it as an obstacle, because you're looking at it as a challenge. What are you doing at Commonwealth School to help accommodate those students? Because it seems to always be a transient nature there. So what does you do, what does the staff do to kind of accommodate those kids as they come through the door?
Through you, Chair. It's rigorous care, and that is what we do. And we're just a very caring group of individuals that are offering rigorous care to our students. So when a student enters the school, where we ensure that we have student success team meetings regarding that student and that they have the right help and support. And we sometimes will offer an intervention, but it's constant contact with parents and contact with the student and checking in with them. And that is our approach.
Thank you.
Trustee McAllister?
Thank you, Deborah, for your presentation. Just a comment, I don't think you need to apologize at all for your EQAO scores, because they certainly do not reflect the fact that Commonwealth is a hub for the community, and that it doesn't reflect the care and concern for teachers, nor the opportunities that you have provided or you are providing. I note, though, that you said that volunteers and community agencies play a large role in serving student needs. With that in mind, I understand you have a breakfast program.
We do.
And could you comment on the unique nature of that program?
All right, through you, Chair. Yes, we have a breakfast program that has a long history at Commonwealth. What we have involved is our community and people within the community, specifically parents and senior citizens, some of them involved with some of the churches in town. And they come out every day and help deliver a nutritious breakfast for our students that are interested in accessing the program. So school starts at 9 o'clock in the morning, and the program is offered to students at 8:30 in the morning. So they have basically a half an hour to enjoy a breakfast seated at a table, a well-planned, healthy breakfast that always serves eggs, for instance. We have a huge assortment of foods, and we have a menu that rotates that is part of the nutrition guidelines as it pertains to the Breakfast for Learning program, and that's what we operate within. There are specific guidelines that we follow, and it is a funded program, and we're very fortunate, very blessed to have so many great community members that come out to help deliver that program. So we're actually very proud of our program, because our program offers something rather special. The children sit at a table, and there are adults in the room, and they have an opportunity to socialize and talk and learn social skills and learn good manners and have a great start to their school day. So we're really proud of that program.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thanks.
Trustee Buckland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the presentation. I'm looking at two things. You have a transient population, and I'm sure they're crying out for stability, as professionals would. And you showed a picture of 14 professionals working for your student body. Do you find there's a stability or an instability as a result of transient professionals? That is there a greater concern, a greater opportunity for students to stay if the professionals are there currently?
Go ahead.
All right. Through you, Chair. I'm hoping I'm understanding the question correctly. Perhaps.
Well, let me rephrase another.
Okay.
You have a professional, if I could, in the children's aid worker. Has that improved stability in your class? Let's look at in your school. Look at something.
Okay. Yeah.
specific
Yes.
about it, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Through you, Chair. I understand what you're meaning now. Yes, we have a counselor from the Children's Aid Society that comes into the building, and all these additional resources and agency supports really make a difference for our children. Many of our children are struggling with mental health needs, and some of them are dealing with quite a lot personally. So those kinds of interventions help the children access the curriculum, because sometimes they can't access the curriculum if those needs have not been met.
I have one more.
Go ahead, Trustee Buckland.
This is a wild one. Maybe it should really go beyond the principal to the wizard, because I'm thinking of the statistics. So the students have written the grade 3 exam, and there's a 40% change in any grade 6. So is there any effort to remove the scores of those departed and add the new arrivals at the previous untested score at your school, Commonwealth? Is that too complicated?
No.
Could you handle that?
Director, are you the wizard today?
I'm a wizard.
I look around the room, I got lots to choose from.
I'm a wizard today. The ability to track where kids are going, we're getting even better at. So, for example, if we wanted to get down to that level of pixels, to that level of the hairs on the kid's head, is that we could, within our board, say through Power School, and the different things we do with it, we could take all the grade 3s from Commonwealth, and we know about 52% stay, but 48% move, or close to half the class is different when they get to grade 6. We could take a look and compare their results with the people from EQAO and go back that particular way. The difficulty we'd have is if they moved out of our board and our jurisdiction, and we'd lose access to get to their information through, for example, you have different levels of, the principal can see all of her or his schools, the superintendent can see all the schools, I can see all the schools, and so we can go and find out where the kids are and say, did they learn on their journey as they go through? So yes, technically, we could track that down, and we could actually take a look at the grade 6s, who perhaps because of transience or whatever it is, that they're underperforming, and find out where they were, in fact, in grade 3, and go through their equal results and determine their growth as well. Right now, at our secondary schools, we are able to track the kids, so that's why we're going to have the ability to really take a look at our 90% graduation rate as you go through. We can do that.
Okay, that almost answers it, Mr. Chair, but I had one other little thing. As a result of recent PD on data, I'm thinking that as a principal, it might show more improvement if I took the scores of the children who were not there and added them to my grade 3, subtracted the ones who were there and were tested. So now and I've done such a terrific job of teaching, if say they came in grade 4, 5, and 6, that the improvement would be greater at our school.
Well, one of the things that when you're taking a look at data and then using the data to make good decisions, one of the things that we've been able to do in your backyard and Trustee McDonald's backyard is deal with the transient issue in a different way. Because we have a robust transportation system in Cornwall, and it's something that we're actually doing in Brockville as well, we'll have a family move halfway through the school year. And we know that this is just the wrong time, it's the wrong thing. And in fact, what we've done is we've used our transportation procedures to keep the son or daughter at the school, although the family may have moved to a different location in Brockville or a different location in Cornwall. So using that data that you've said to say, how can we track Sally or Bobby or Reggie even better? So that's where good data helps with good public policy and decision making.
That, Mr. Chairman, is the kind of resourcefulness I'm hoping for.
Well, Nancy's predecessor as CFO, we figured that out about 5 or 6 years ago. And it'd be interesting to see, I think, going back with data, has it really helped us? Because one of the things that you saw at Deborah's school, people feel really good at the school. And that's very important for some of our kids who have 16 or 17 school modes before they're 10 years of age.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Trustee Karkner?
Through you, Chair, we just heard the director say that the people that work in that school feel good about their school. And it's very obvious in the audit as we read through it that they are very proud of what is going on. Could you think of one specific thing that you could share with us that you feel has made that possible, that change over the last 2-3 years?
Go ahead.
Through you, Chair. I think I haven't been at Commonwealth, years back. I started there a year and a half ago. But I think the biggest thing is I think they've always been a great team, and I can't comment prior to that, but I can say that it's working as a team. It really is getting in and working together as a team and having a lot of dialogue and conversation and demonstrating that it's all about putting kids first and really caring for our children.
Okay. Set it for questions. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that information forward. Val, you're going to introduce our next guest.
It's my pleasure to introduce to you Laurie McElhern. Laurie is the principal of Nation View Public School from the heart of Dundas County. And Superintendent Coombs and I spent some time there doing the audit right before Christmas. It's a hectic time in schools, always those last few days before Christmas, and we were so welcomed and saw very engaged students and some very active learning at that time. And so Laurie's going to share with us the summary of Nation View Public School and the audit report. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you.
Now, just before you get started, is that a Montreal Canadiens red?
Yes, it is.
Senator's red.
Checking. Okay.
This is Nation View Public Schools audit report to the trustees. I'd like to start off the report by introducing you to one of the families of our school. This is the Jones Minor family on the first day of school of this year. Haley was going into grade 1 and Taylor is going into senior kindergarten. Both girls have very enthusiastic students in our building, and poor Mia has to wait one more year. The good news is Mia was the first one registered online for the 2014-15 school year. The other good news is their mother, Kate, is the treasurer of our school council. She's one of 15 volunteers that is in our building on a weekly basis, and she is very supportive of all of the fundraising activities that we have initiated at Nation View. Our school demographics, you can read through that. What I would like to add to this is, that is not mentioned, is we have a very vibrant and successful private daycare in our building. This past summer, they moved to a different area of our school. They have a toddler, a preschool program, and a program for before and after school. We have tried very hard and very successfully to increase our involvement of them in the school. So we do encourage them to come to our dramatic events, to our Halloween walks, and they even participated in our concert in December of this year. Our school success plan is presented to you. The last two items on our school success plan, so the second and third goals, really came out of our changing demographics. During my 4.5 years at Nation View, we have welcomed the student population and community of Inkerman Public School. We have implemented as one of the first schools a full-day kindergarten program. And as well, we have seen our grade 7s and 8s go to the new 7 to 12 model. What this allowed our community to do was to review our use of facilities, how we grouped the students within our building, the policies and procedures we had in operation, and how we were going to change that to meet the needs of a JK to grade 6 school. Some of the highlights I'd like to make you aware of in our current state. We have a good correlation between our EQAO results, our report card data, our classroom assessments, as well as our teacher observations. The teachers do feel that they have a say in the school, their opinions are respected, and that they are using data on an ongoing basis to improve student success. As well, I'd like to call your attention to our technology. It's present in all of our classrooms, and it's used on a regular basis, which includes assistive technologies. In fact, we put a focus with students from grade 2 up to ensure they are trained on how to use assistive technologies, and our staff had made use of computer training to hone in on their expertise as well. Our areas for improvement. One of our areas is increasing our student involvement in school activities to promote their engagement. We did review that, and we have asked our students for what activities, both in extracurricular, in terms of clubs, and other activities that they're engaged in their classrooms that they would like to see implemented at Nation View Public School. We have also expanded our use of electronic methods to communicate with our parent community through a development of a Facebook site. It has proven to be very successful, and we are encouraging our staff now to look into the use of that for their classrooms. Our EQAO data, I'd like to start with our grade 6 data in reading, writing, and mathematics, and it shows progress over the last 5 years. However, it does show a slower rate of growth in the area of mathematics. With us being a smaller school, individual students, depending on the class size in that year, can represent 3 to 6% of the cohort. Our grade 3 data is lower than our grade 6 data. It does show improvement over time, especially in the area of writing. And once again, mathematics has been in a decline for the last 2 years. We also analyzed our cohort data. So the first 2 areas, grade 3 and grade 6 from 2008, we looked at the progress that the students made from the EQAO results in grade 3 through grade 6, and then we did the same in the year 2009 grade 6 EQAO. It does show a dramatic improvement in the areas of reading and writing from grade 3 to grade 6 for our students. The area of mathematics shows growth, but not as quickly as the area of reading and writing. We took this data and looked at the detailed reports from EQAO, our report cards, our classroom assessments, as well as the teachers' observations, and targeted the area of number sense and numeration for growth. Our desired state, our math achievement throughout the school needs to improve. Some of the areas that we need to improve on, there is no set problem-solving model used within the school. We are currently purchasing one that will be used from grade 1 through grade 6, which will contain common terminology, common frameworks, and a building upon strategies for students from grade 1 through 6. Another area that I'd like to highlight is we are developing a math wall that will display student achievement in the area of number sense and numeration. Our steps to achieve this desired state: working together to increase our professional learning communities and use the expertise of our staff across divisions and board resource staff as well. We need to also develop and plan to gather and analyze the data that supports student success over time. What we have done in the last few months is made a plan in the area of number, sense, and enumeration to target one area every 4 weeks, gather the data, meet, analyze, and discuss what the next steps are to get our students who are in level 2 to a level 3. I'd like to conclude the presentation with a picture of the Nation View community. This, I believe, represents how this community has come together over 5 years. The students are outlined in our school colors. The picture was taken by one of our community partners and organized by our school council. As well, if you look very closely, you will see all of our support staff, teachers, regular parent volunteers, and I think a couple of youngsters that will be entering school in the year 2020.
All right. Thank you, Principal McElaren. Comments, questions, trustees? Trustee McAllister?
Thank you, Laurie, for your presentation. I'll go down a road that Trustee McMillan did not go, and that is to say that you are a former student of mine as well as 3 other people in this room. And that I taught at Nation View in 1983 as an exchange teacher. So I can certainly attest to that community and that school. I really liked your slide with regard to the cohort data, because I think that that's much more significant than a one-shot image. I guess my question to you is this: as one of the first group of schools which introduced FDK, full-day kindergarten, I'm not asking for a scientific or any kind of depth analysis, but what's your impression of how it is working and what kind of an impact it has had on those kids at this point, now that they are in, what, grade? 2, 3? Yeah.
Through you, Chair. We're very proud to be one of the first FDK schools. And I do admit we had a few little blips in welcoming 43 new students in the first year. The staff have worked very hard to ensure that their program reflects the needs of the students in a play-based program, and I think that is the true success of it. These little ones coming to school are involved in their education from the very beginning, and they are moved forward based on where they're coming from and what their needs are. I think it's really important to note as well that 5 of my 6 staff in full-day kindergarten are currently taking the kindergarten AQ course.
Very good, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Trustee McRae?
Yes, through you, Chair. I just wanted to ask you a question about the school success plan, the third one, developing an atmosphere of respect and common courtesy by demonstrating proper social practices modeled in a consistent manner by all members of the school community. How do you intend to measure that, and what would you use as indicators?
Go ahead.
Through you, Chair. We have monthly moral character award ceremonies. Each one of our classes has taken on a role of some type of performance or teaching throughout the school. As well, we have enlisted our community in general to make recommendations for students who they know have done something, whether it's in our school or outside of our community, but I haven't had any recommendations yet. So we are looking at the data we have within our school. How many students are we recognizing for this behavior? How many parent volunteers are we recognizing for the behavior, as well as for our staff members?
Any other comments? All right, great. Thanks very much. Thank you, David and Val, for introducing or bringing us today. Okay, team, we're now on to our next item, which is the annual occupational health and safety report. And I'll ask that Superintendent of Business Nancy Barclay introduces.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is my pleasure to introduce Dennis Kalup. He is our Health and Safety Specialist. Dennis has been with us only since the end of August.
That's right.
Last week of August he began. He's been going steadily since. Along with having his Canadian Registered Safety Professional designation, Dennis has a certificate in HR management and a mechanical engineering technologist diploma. He has many years of experience in industry, including automotive, food, and before coming here in the high-tech sector, he was employed by Smart Technologies, the company that makes smart boards. So I welcome Dennis, and he is here to provide the annual report to the board on, in this case, 2012-2013 occupational health and safety report, so injury performance over the last year, and action plans that he has derived to implement. So welcome, Dennis.
Thank you, Nancy. And thank you for finding time for me tonight. We're only spending time on is our annual occupational health and safety report. You've seen these other years. We're going to be spending time on, ahead here. The results from the 2012 and 13 school year. Going to cover some highlights, some of those points from the data we're going to look at, and we're going to share some action plans that we're looking at to use going forward. First off, the data source we're using comes from the School Board Cooperative, the SBCI, and their annual health and safety reports that we receive from them. And also, there's some in your reports themselves, there's some also information there from the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, or WSIB, and they have reports that I've used for the data reports that you have along with this presentation. The data is derived from School Board WSIB reporting during the period of September 1st, 2012 through August 31st, 2013, and includes all allowed and pending WSIB claims. For the first one we're going to look at is the lost time accidents. Lost time accidents is, and this is WSIB again, so work-related injury. Lost time accident is an indicator of accident severity, so it's a more severe accident. Somebody's actually lost time, lost earnings, and due to the work-related injury. Some of the definitions you're going to see in the slides are the first one there is frequency, and that equals the number of accidents per 100 staff. Okay, so we're looking at that. So that allows us to compare different schools, or different school boards, I should say, apples to apples, right? It gives us a comparable using frequency. And the next one is peer group. And under the SBCI clients, we're one of the larger groups, or payroll groups. So looking at the lost time, you see in 2011 and 12, ours is the yellow one, the Upper Canada. We're at 0.94 was our frequency. Our peer group, so the large payroll group for the SBCI clients, was at 1.67. And last year, we moved up to 1.67, still below our peer groups at 1.77, and that's for lost time. So there was an increase there. The next slide shows on the first column, on the left-hand side, or second column I should say, shows the total number of lost time accidents, so the actual numbers. So last year, 11 and 12, it was 29, and then last year went up to 51 actual incidents. Some learning points from this. So lost time accidents increased by 76% from the previous year. And particularly we've seen increases in elementary teachers by 31% and educational assistants by 23% within that increase. The next one we're looking at is no lost time accidents. So that's an accident that did result in an employee being injured but did not lose time from work. So 2011 and 12, you saw Upper Canada at 2.34 was our frequency. The peer group was 2.44. And then last year we moved up to 2.72 for no lost times, and above our peer group, which was at 2.23. We're looking at the total numbers of no lost time accidents. 2011 and 12 was actually 72, and last year was 83. And the learning point from this is the no lost time accidents increased by 15%. So we're actually now higher than our peer group within that category. A cautionary note I threw in there is that employers with higher rates of lost times and no lost time injuries can be identified by enforcement agencies like the WSIB and Ministry of Labor for targeted inspections. Once you start moving up too high, they start looking for that and they start targeting. If we're looking at comparisons, what you want to do is have obviously the least amount of lost time accidents. You want to be reducing lost time accidents compared to no lost times. You want to reduce all your accidents. So what we've done is looked at this as a comparison for 2011. If you look at the pie chart in the center, you've seen that the lost time was at about 38%. No lost times at 62%. We've increased this, so that's for 2012 and 13. So we've actually increased from the 2011 and 12 year. And we learned from this is a need to lower number of accidents, especially lost time accidents, to lower the accident-related costs and injuries to the employees, obviously. And then we looked at the combined total accident frequencies. So this is lost time and no lost time accidents. And we've seen that from 2011 and 12, we're at 3.29. Our peer group was at 4.1. And actually, this year we surpassed our peer group, and we're at 4.39. So what we've done here is an increase of 33% in the total combined accident frequency, is above the peer groups for the first time in 5 years. And when we look into the data itself, we find the dominant types of injuries we're having for the combined group is 24% of overexertion and strain, so sprains and strains, and 22% of those injuries were slips and falls. So then we look at putting some action plans in place. We see the numbers, we've got the data, we want to find ways of reducing those injuries. So what we want to do too is we want to look at what that focus is going to look like. We're going to focus on establishing and maintaining health and safety programs that will create safe working environments for great teaching and meet legislated requirements within Ontario. We can do this by being proactive in identifying hazards in the workplace and developing and implementing practical and sustainable solutions. So there's 3 action plans we're looking at here. So the first one I've listed here is a legislated one first. That's one required by legislation. So we're going to implement a health and safety awareness training, which is going to focus on worker and supervisor rights, roles, and responsibilities under the Occupational Health and Safety Act in Ontario. This will help us meet the new Ontario Ministry of Labor regulations that requires health and safety awareness training for every worker and supervisor in Ontario. The effective date to have this training completed is July 1st, 2014. How we're going to do that is we're going to focus on in-house training in health and safety hazard awareness and accident prevention. And we'll track that by tracking the completion of the training itself. And also we're going to track the lost time and no lost time WSIB accident claims. Our second priority action is the Occupational Health and Safety Act requires, it says, employees to report accidents and workplace hazards. That's a requirement of the Act. So we're going to continue with our already existing accident and incident reporting guidelines and enhance that with a hazard reporting program also. What that's going to do is add a new hazard reporting process that allows and encourages employees to easily report hazard conditions or practices as they notice them. The hazards would be reported verbally to their supervisor. That's what they do right now, and that's under the law. That's very important. And or completed on an online form. This gives them the opportunity to, rather if the supervisor is not available, to report it online too and get that process moving forward. The goal is to eliminate hazards and reduce accident risks, and also we'll be doing this in conjunction with the Joint Health and Safety Committee to develop guidelines and the forms. The plan is to have that done by June 2014. And then transition that training to the health and safety reps and administrators by September 2014. And we'll track the processing of monitoring this will be to track the online reporting usage of the online form. We can track that. and then also look at also the lost time and no lost time WSAB claims and follow up where necessary. And the third one is to continue health and safety workplace inspections. They're already in place and working within all of our facilities, our schools, and to focus on the prevalent accident types which we saw in the report. So the data shows that exertions and strains and slips and falls were our prevalent types. So we're going to add that criteria to our current inspection forms that will focus the auditor's attention onto, onto those subjects, so prominently on the ergonomics and the slip and fall hazards within the schools or the work areas. So again, we'll work with the Joint Health and Safety Committee to have that inspection completed by June 2014, and then we'll train and kick that off in September 2014. And again, what we'll do is we'll track the lost time and no lost time WSAB claims and follow up where necessary. And thank you. Any questions?
Okay, trustees, any comments, questions? Trustee Karkner?
It's kind of nice to put a face to a name. Welcome to the boardroom. Through you, Chair. In one of your slides, you mentioned that we could be targeted for
Yes.
an inspection. Have you had any inkling that that might happen here because our numbers have gone up?
Through you, board, or through you, Chair, sorry. There's been nothing so far. No, I've talked to the Ministry of Labor inspector. I haven't heard anything, but I've never asked either. But there's been nothing like that yet. But it is something you need to watch when the accidents, especially lost time accidents, and that's a real trigger for WSAB because that's what they track. And if they see the lost time accidents increasing, they will ask for an inspection to take place either by themselves or they'll ask their arm, the Ministry of Labor, to come in and do an inspection for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Trustee McPherson?
Great Mandy's accidents are preventable. Is there, through the chair, is there any process in place where somebody walks through the school before it opens and identifies potential hazards? Is there, nobody does a walkthrough in the mornings before classes start? That's just a question.
Go ahead.
To you, Mr. Chair. Right now, I guess the only ones that would be aware of that would be the custodians if they're doing that, or the principal. There are monthly inspections completed through the requirements of the Joint Health and Safety Committee, right? So that they're completed to do audits and inspections jointly with the workers and the management of the schools. But I'm not aware of any daily inspections or morning inspections, no.
Trustee McCray?
Through you, Chair. Under Learning Point, you have that the lost time accidents have increased, and the employee groups are elementary teachers and educational assistants. Any idea why those groups in particular?
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The EAs specifically are strains and sprains. So the data I saw was handling moving children and handling people. So those are the kind of injuries that are taking place. The element and also the elementary was the same thing. It was sprains and strains. Some of those are trips and slips hazards too, right? So things within the school. Some of the opportunities we saw as we were going through that were trips and slips on flooring, on cords, on sometimes on students. So those are very controllable hazards, and those are things we can hopefully find within our audit system if we start targeting those and to remove those types of hazards or risks within the workplace.
Trustee McDonald?
When you track the training that you talked about, where do you track that? Within our PeopleSoft, or is that in a different area?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we're looking at PeopleSoft right now, or using something like SurveyMonkey to track it as far as the training for the Ministry of Labor training goes. Yeah, that's what we're looking at right now. Hopefully we can use PeopleSoft because that gives us an internal system that we can track better ourselves. Working on those details right now, though.
Trustee McAllister?
Again, welcome, Dennis, to the board and to the board meeting. I have a question with regard to, could you explain to us how the site inspections or the reviews are conducted? And how often and when?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, I'd be glad to. So what, on a monthly basis, they're done jointly within, let's say, the schools, for example. That's the main place where we do them right now, at the schools. So the principal or VP would go around with one of the health and safety reps. They would complete the inspection at the school. Those results would be put into our database on Insight, so they'd actually be listed on there, and you can actually go on there and see what their inspections are like. The key part of the inspections is not only to do the inspection, but to find corrective actions. So we have a program set up, and we have forms to use, and they're used on a monthly basis.
Supplementary.
Go ahead, Trustee McAllister.
How is how well is the Joint Health and Safety Committee functioning?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We've got two very strong co-chairs, Carol Ann and William. They run a very good meeting. I'd say it's very effective. I guess that's your main question, I guess. It's an effective committee. The meetings go very well, and we're working on a number of programs within subcommittees, and that's always a key to me, right? Not only are you working on the monthly programs, but you're creating also subcommittees to report back to that committee on a monthly basis. So right now we have one with custodian concerns. We have a number of other ones that we're working on too, as far as like these other programs we're going to be working on here would be subcommittees, and they report back to that committee, that main committee, on a monthly basis, let them know what the progress is and where they're getting to on those programs. So the committee is fairly effective. From what I've seen so far, it's fairly effective.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much for the report. I think this is one we actually have to vote on, isn't it? Do we not? Right, okay. Right, so, the policies. 226, 421, 424. These are just standard renewals. Okay. Any comments or questions?
Favor.
You're gonna,
Have there been any changes to these?
no.
No. Okay.
So Trustee McAllister, you move them. Seconded by Trustee McDonald. The committee whole recommend the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 226. Sure, I like the word approve. But anyway, it's good enough for now. Policy 226, safe workplace. Workplace harassment, policy 421, violence in the workplace, and policy 424, occupational health and safety, as presented. Go ahead and cast your ballot. Trustee McAllister's in favor. Trustee McPherson? Oh, not in the room. Okay, vote not taken. It passes. All right, thank you. Okay. Some months ago, we asked for a follow-up on how well we implemented the 2008 recommendations from Boundary 2020. And we have that report here this evening. And we have Phil Dawes, Planning and Research Officer, and Tim Mills, Executive Director of the Upper Canada Leger Centre. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. It's my pleasure to have the opportunity this evening to present with my co-chair for this project, Tim Mills, the results from the 2013 FSL review. Trustees will recall that the last FSL review, undertaken in 2007, provided a solid foundation for the Boundary 2020 review and the system-wide improvements that resulted from that process. So with this motion that was approved by trustees last September, We're pleased to have had the opportunity to examine where we're at with French as a second language from the perspective of Boundary 2020, and equally important, from the perspective of the FSL framework for Ontario.
Good evening, trustees, senior team. It's also a pleasure to highlight other members of the committee. Jennifer Charbonneau, principal at Williamstown Public School. Kathy Cooper, principal at Maxville. Ron Ferguson, principal at Almont District High School. John Lalone, assistant principal of student engagement. And Julie Paula-Kowachniak, who's an FSL program resource teacher, and she's in the back. Indeed, we stand here after completion of the review that we present, extremely pleased and happy with how we've progressed. It's an opportunity to celebrate. We've had a number of reviews in Upper Canada, be it special education, quality daily phys ed, and character education. As we reflect on the report from 2007 and see how it's been implemented, there's much to celebrate. You will recall in the last FSL review, it was conducted as a framework to Boundary 2020. Prior to Boundary 2020, we had a number of programs running in FSL. We did have early French immersion. Extended French immersion was, in some cases, 75 minutes, school-wide K to 8. There was extended immersion for half-day in grade 5 entry programs, extended immersion in grade 7 and 8. And through the recommendations of Boundary 2020, we arrived at kindergarten to grade 6 now with the implementation, soon to be kindergarten to grade 8, with core English and core French, and French immersion. The report is a celebration of extensive change that happened in a key component in the curriculum. Indeed, we have had 6 years of an effective implementation, which in many respects has exceeded our expectations. Later in the presentation, my colleague Phil will highlight schools that have introduced innovative approaches to address the realities. Most importantly, the board is now very well positioned to reinforce its trajectory to maximize opportunities for students to receive effective French language instruction. Really, the vision is what you see on this slide. The vision for FSL is articulated very well in the ministry's FSL framework released in 2013. The 3 bullets: increasing student confidence, proficiency, and achievement in FSL, increase the percentage of students studying FSL until graduation, and increase student, educator, parent, and community engagement in FSL. Trustees will also note that in the report is a 3-year plan. It's in the appendices that has been provided to the ministry in accordance with the guideline expectations of the framework. In our overview of the findings with the committee, there were 2 key components: enrollment evidence and feedback evidence. Phil will give you the enrollment evidence, and then I'll highlight the feedback evidence.
Thanks, Tim. There are in the report actually a number of references to enrollment analysis that we did through this review. I wanted to take you through the 2 most important pieces of this information this evening. The first one is this chart, which is in your report. What we're showing here is the extent to which enrollment distribution is happening between elementary schools that offer the early French immersion program and those elementary schools that only offer the core French English program. Now, with Boundary 2020, the board was able to improve student access to French immersion, and as such, there's a minimum of 1 French immersion center for each family of schools across the board, and this is a marked improvement in student access to French immersion than prior to Boundary 2020. However, the French immersion centers act as magnet schools by drawing students from other school areas that only offer the core French English program. And from our analysis, we found that system-wide, about 34% of the kindergarten enrollments at French immersion centers came from other school areas in those families of schools that only offer core French English. And this table shows how that enrollment distribution is spread out across the system. For example, you can see in this table that 10 of the elementary schools we examined had between 31 and 40% of their kindergarten enrollments registered at French immersion schools. The other key piece of enrollment evidence we wanted to share with you tonight relates to retention in French immersion. What this table, which is also in your report, compares is the number of students enrolled in the early immersion program for grade 1 back in 2002 with the number of students in 2013 that are taking French immersion courses in grade 12. And what we found from this analysis is a retention rate in French immersion of about 13%. In other words, when we looked at the number of students this year that are taking grade 12 credits courses in French immersion, it was 77 students. But back in 2002, there were 589 students registered in early French immersion programs for grade 1. So that's how we're drawing that conclusion around a 13% retention rate. I suppose it varies from year to year, but it gives you a basic idea of the numbers of students that compare in high school taking French immersion compared to the entry levels.
And now to the feedback evidence. It represents the information that the project team received from interviews with principals, teachers, and for us, most importantly, the student voice at our schools. In the 7 bullets, I want to talk briefly about each one. FSL has improved since Boundary 2020. Since the implementation phase, we now see every family of schools providing equitable access to core French, English programming, and early French immersion programs. By all indications, school and community interest and support for FSL has exceeded expectations. Parent and student choice and elementary to secondary transitions together. Parents and students increasingly choose EFI as a program option. However, the increase in elementary numbers, as Phil alluded to, has not resulted in an increase in secondary numbers and our retention rate in grades 11 and 12. With respect to parent and student choice, a common theme that came through was kindergarten to grade 6, often it was parents choosing for their children to be in French immersion. And as we got into the secondary panel, increasingly it was the students choosing the pathway they wanted, whether it was to go on to workplace, college, or university. Inclusion, and this came through loud and clear, that all means all for us. We can be proud of this. I alluded to the spec ed reviews earlier, and the continued efforts of all staff to include students in the regular classroom, and that includes an FSL. In K-8, it is not common for students to be exempt from FSL instruction. It speaks volumes to our inclusive practices. In terms of teacher qualifications, since the expansion and growth of EFI programs in Upper Canada, the board has had to find a greater number of FSL qualified teachers. They go hand in hand. At the same time, it coincides with a time of significant declining enrollment. This enrollment decline is now similarly happening in our secondary schools. And from the feedback from teaching staff, teachers with FSL qualifications could be seen as having an advantage in finding entry-level positions at schools. And the second last one there, alignment. There's a wide-scale variation of the practice of our secondary schools when we were looking at French immersion certificates. What we discovered is certificates were being issued, sometimes at graduation, sometimes not, sometimes with board insignia, sometimes not. And it spoke to us the need for improved alignment in FSL programming overall. Our communities, families, staff, and students perhaps would benefit from a deeper understanding of the goals, advantages, and challenges of FSL instruction. That comes through at the beginning of our presentation with the framework of FSL. The numbers of students in EFI, early French immersion, are increasing, and a renewed focus specific to FSL in schools could be advantageous. The last one's culture of FSL in schools. The review process indicated varying interpretations in schools as to the nature and extent that the culture, the French language, was being embraced. We received information and ideas how schools and the board as a whole can promote FSL, and by applying different strategies within the communities. Examples might include exchange programs, enrichment opportunities, utilizing community resources. In slides 10 and 11, for us, which was not only enlightening, encouraging, was the student voice. We have continued to say throughout the report that parents seem to choose the program in kindergarten, and when we get to high school, increasingly students are choosing the program. We therefore interviewed some students to gain a deeper perspective of their motivation for staying in immersion or not. The results from the survey generally indicate a majority of students opting to stay in the immersion program claim job opportunity, parental choice is the main reason. Students choosing to leave French later on in their academic career in high school generally indicated it was because it was hurting their marks, they needed to achieve for post-secondary, or they had no longer had an interest in taking classes. That comes through on this slide here, and in the next slide about decisions to leave French based on academic, social, or other reasons. And I'll just leave that for a moment.
An additional source of information for this review involved the stories of innovation that we heard from elementary schools that have come up with solutions to address the realities often associated with quote-unquote dual track schools. And I use the term quote-unquote because, of course, the term dual track really is somewhat misleading because it conjures images of schools offering parallel program offerings with core French English students in one stream and early immersion students enrolled in a parallel but separate stream. But in reality, and as referenced in other parts of the report, many of our dual track elementary schools actually have significantly lower enrollments in their core French English programs than in their early immersion programs. And consequently, treating these programs separately for the entire school day has some operational and teaching challenges to allow the smaller number of students to feel included as a part of the whole school culture. So in our review, we found some examples, and we were very pleased with this, some examples of schools that have used innovation to create whole school cultures despite low enrollments in their core French English programs. And in the report, we provided for you 2 of such examples, and there are many across our board, but we wanted to give you these 2, notably Cambridge School and Russell Public Schools, where the school day has been organized such that all students are treated as an entire student body. And you'll see from the information before you, both of those schools are such that they have quite smaller English program enrollments than their French immersion enrollments. So in response, they've organized their day through what they call a tumbling timetable, where all of the students receive instruction together for the English half of the day. And this is what we found to be a very innovative solution to a challenge that's associated with low enrollment schools, which, let's face it, as a board of small schools, this is really something that we thought the board could consider looking at in greater detail for opportunities in other school areas. So in leading up to our wrap-up and recommendations for this, we can see that the review has provided an opportunity for reflection in a number of areas. And as our team proceeded with this review, we had many situations whereby we could discuss the information we received. In the report, we've provided some key items for consideration, again, based upon where the board is positioned now to maintain its trajectory with respect to FSL. Furthermore, the information presented is an example of how indicator data can be used to drive decision-making, and we feel could complement the approaches that are being taken by the board right now through the development of the framework.
In conclusion, you will recognize this slide from the beginning. Boundary 2020 objectives have been achieved from the onset of the past FSL review. This has been an opportunity for us as a committee, and indeed we interviewed every principal. Got a lot of feedback from staff and the student voice to celebrate what has taken place to date. We want to build upon and celebrate the unique Upper Canada approaches to program delivery and reinforce the board's positive trajectory of effective FSL and instruction for students. Based on the report and the feedback, here are the recommendations. First, report back to trustees on the progress of the FSL plan provided to the Ministry of Education, which is in your appendices, including opportunities to establish partnerships with international school districts in accordance with the provincial FSL framework. And that one speaks to the culture of FSL in schools. Two, what has come through loud and clear in the report with our surveys and with Phil's hard data on enrollment, build the capacity of secondary schools to address student retention in FSL. And three, support additional elementary schools with consideration of parental student interest in available school space that wish to offer whole school language instruction. We'll clarify that. Whole school language instruction being core French, English stream, as well as early French immersion. Thank you.
Okay. All right, any comments or questions, trustees? Trustee Carpenter?
For you, Chair, in your study of this French programs in our different schools, is there an area of the board that stood out as having more students remain in the French programs at the secondary level and achieving their certification in French language?
Go ahead.
Through you, Chair, quite honestly, I'd have to revisit the data we've got on that to get back to you with an accurate answer. I don't have that in.
Follow-up?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I ask that is if we have an area that is keeping our students in our high schools, we need to focus in on see what their best practices are in doing that. And that's why I'd like to know that answer.
Any other comments or questions? Trustee Buckland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, through you, it's a frightening pyramid when you look at it. Very successful at 600 at the beginning of grade 1, and very few 100 left or so at the. But I'm just wondering if there is an evaluation of the level of French. Perhaps the students have sufficient oral that they can work in coffee shop sales or hamburger spot sales, and that's sufficient. Now that's one question I have. Is there a measure of that level?
Can you introduce your colleague too, please?
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Trustee Buckland. I'm going to introduce.
Before you answer that, can you introduce Julie to us, please? Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Through you, Chair. Julie Pollock-Wachniak is a program resource teacher in FSL. She certainly has a big responsibility, and she's going to talk to what you're asking related to level that students would be at.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, through you, Chair. To address your question on proficiency, Trustee Buckland, we've been learning more about the Common European Framework of Reference in the province of Ontario over the last 3 years. And that really looks at the different levels of proficiency when we're acquiring second language. So French teachers in our board are learning more about the CEFR, the Common European Framework of Reference, which does show everyone what a student can do at any given time during their language acquisition, and then where they may go next for a level of, for an area of improvement. So we are looking at the levels of proficiency of our students.
You're looking at it, okay, thank you. And the second part, Mr.
ahead,
Chair,
Trustee
is on the financing now. There's multi-year funding from sort of French funding funneled from the feds on a multi-year basis. And the last time I looked at this, they was announced in Cornwall, and the English Catholic Board, with a board of less than half our size, had $250,000 more for their FSL, $666,000. Now, I haven't heard the latest one. Has anyone got this figure from the federal government, which is funneled down and announced by the either the education minister or the premier for a 4 or 5 year span? Has the treasurer got anything on that, or the director?
At this particular time, Trustee Buckland, through the chair, we have no numbers whatsoever for that. We don't know our numbers, let alone their numbers.
But I don't want to see this happen again, so get on it. Okay, thank you.
Does anybody know, like, what the program that Trustee Buckland is referencing?
Well, I do, yes.
Okay. Well, then you can answer it.
Newspaper article which was published in a meeting in Cornwall by the premier or the education, and I will bring in this. I have circulated it in the past, and I assume it went up to 212, and then there was to be another multi-year announcement of federal funding to help Ontario school boards.
This is for French boards, though.
For FSL.
Okay. Trustee McPherson?
Thank you for a very enlightening report. It simply underlines what I'm hearing in my ward, in that magnet schools are attracting an extraordinary amount of the early enrollments. I'm glad to see for consideration that you are entertaining the possibility of different models rather than a magnet school model. When we start talking about success rates and how many kids graduate with a certificate, over the past couple of months I've talked to an awful lot of people in my community, and what I'm getting back is that certificate is not that important. What it is a functional ability to function in a second language. And I think that as our cohorts from the early immersion start coming through, because for my part of the board, we didn't have kindergarten enrollment in French, that you're going to see that functional ability increase even greater. But I'm not so sure that we're going to see a larger number of people graduating with certificates. And every success has a negative side, and I'm very concerned about the negative side in my ward with the success of the early immersion program. I've got rural country schools that are struggling. So, under your recommendations, first off, I would like clarification on numbers 1 and 3. Just exactly what do they mean by those two statements? And through the chair, please.
Yeah, go ahead. Mr. Mills, Mr. Dawes.
Okay, Julie's going to talk about number 1.
Through you, Chair. We submitted a plan to the ministry in December that outlined the board's goals that aligned with the provincial goals. So we'll be tracking these goals over a 3-year period. And so it is our intention that we would be reporting back to the Board of Trustees on a regular basis to inform you how our plan is going.
Go ahead, and then the second part, the number 3. I want to just, yep, please, clarification.
You want
Yeah.
number 3 now? Or
Just what do you mean by partnerships with other international school districts? What does that mean?
the feedback from staff and students that many wanted us to look into considering exchange programs, whether it was with other schools. It could be domestic, it could be international. Recently we had a representative from the Ministry District School Board in France, of which we have an agreement to look at sending students, as well as perhaps exchange of teaching staff. And right now we're working on with 4 schools in the Reel to Reel festival local. They're going to network with a school in this district in France to create a 3-minute video together to be presented. That's the plan.
There you go.
In terms of number 3, support additional elementary schools with consideration of parental student interest. That's the recommendation. How that may come about is to be determined. We have a few situations that you have highlighted, Trustee McPherson, where we have a large number of immersion students, for example, with portables, and what you've said in terms of maybe a rural school nearby that is well below capacity.
Go ahead.
I'm going to get out in thin ice here, and if I do, just let me drop through. What would happen if we turned internally and said to other boards that we have communities that we can't serve because of distance, and yet we have 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 competing school systems in a small community? If we can't offer early immersion in a community, but there's enough students in that community that would support it, but they're split between several boards, what would happen if we approached other boards to enhance the educational experience for students in a community by offering facilities or using facilities, some kind of partnership between boards, where we have, say, a couple of 100 students in a community and they're split between 3 schools and nobody's got a school. And I know I'm on thin ice. You can overrule if you want.
Well, I don't know that there's a question. I think that it's, the fact remains is that that people in Ontario have the right to obtain education from a public school or from any of the school boards, right? So there has to be that we have to offer. We can't abdicate that responsibility. I'm not sure if anybody wants to add anything to that. I mean, I think that that's probably the issue. But I think that, unless I'm misreading 3, recommendation 3, it might help that community deal with that. Might it not? Can you maybe explain how that might work?
Through you, Chair, maybe another way of looking at this is to try and address the issues associated with this imbalance of enrollments that's happening between elementary schools within a given family of schools. Think about it as like bringing the program to the student instead of bringing the student to the program. What we've provided for you through this report is 2 examples, and there are many more, where schools have understood through innovation how to organize their school day in a way where they've managed very well issues in enrollment imbalance. So you had 2 examples of schools in this report where they have significantly higher French immersion enrollments than they have English enrollments. So that type of school organization theoretically could be made available through support at any given school across our district if it was understood how to organize that day and if the appropriate supports were put in place to address those situations. One of the issues we found and that we found throughout this review was the need to understand local conditions. You know, the knowledge of and demand for French is not the same across our board. It varies from district to district. So what we're suggesting is we want to give that level of care to each of our family of schools where we can address these enrollment imbalances through the eyes of the student to provide them opportunities for all means all.
Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair. I want to, first I want to thank you, Phil, for using that expression of bringing the program to the students as opposed to the students going to the program. I agree completely with Trustee McPherson. This is not just a rural situation. If you look at my constituency just as an example, there's only so many kids in the city of Brockville. And we have some schools who have been affected by magnet schools because we lose our population. Some of the schools are getting incredibly small, and they deserve the opportunity to maintain their student body. And I personally would send my child to any school in the city. I would send my child to any school in this board because every school is capable of providing quality learning experience. And I think that by giving our schools the opportunity to at least entertain bringing French back or bringing extended French back to the school is certainly going to give them the opportunity, and I hate to use the word compete because that's not really what I mean, but it's to stay vibrant and to stay alive, to be able to maintain that student leadership and that student model within the school that every school needs to have. So the question that I have, and I think it's a wonderful suggestion, especially on a very selfish personal level representing in my own constituency, what perceive, I mean, it seems very simple on the surface, but obviously there would be obstacles involved. What do you foresee as an obstacle in terms of implementing recommendation number 3?
Through you, Chair. When you look at the enrollments of elementary schools, for example, in the rural area, if you have a small number of students that are going to go into the kindergarten program, you'd have to look at program delivery model. We've given some innovation through Russell and Cambridge, what they're doing there. Within the city of Brockville, for example, where you have one elementary school, that's not, we put the recommendation forward for discussion. As the committee co-chairs, Phil and I, along with the committee, we provided the enrollment data and the feedback data, and that's for further discussion and decisions to be made outside of the committee.
Through you, Chair. You should be a politician. No, I understand exactly what you're saying, but my intent, I mean, obviously behind my question is, it's a wonderful suggestion. Is it as easy as it sounds, I guess is what I'm getting at, and I understand your answer. That's not your mandate to answer that, and I understand that completely.
Through you, Chair. The number of early French immersion students in the board continues to increase. One question from the committee that we discussed would be if early French immersion was offered at more schools, would it result in more students entering the early French immersion program? And perhaps that's where the decisions would then be made about where you're going to offer program. If it's a redistribution of students over time, so the implementation was 5 years. To this point for K to 6, we have 2 more years to get to K to 8. In elementary, the enrollment decline is pretty well ended. Another fact that Phil highlighted is it really isn't resulting, the early French immersion programs today really is not resulting from us gaining many more students from our coterminous board. So if that would be one of the goals, the committee would caution on that.
The political comment was meant as a compliment.
Trustee Karkner?
Chair, to follow up what Trustee McMillan has said in his own area here, I think we saw an example of where there has been a decline in enrollment in one of our schools because they've taken to the French immersion program in another school. And I think that is it would make much better use of our schools in communities like this and Trustee McPherson's area if we were to try this perhaps in specific areas of the board to get it going, to see how it works out. As far as students coming from the other board, maybe not, but I think it would keep some of our students here who have chosen to go the other way if we were to offer it more in more of our schools.
Trustee McAllister?
I have a question with regard to the seeming dichotomy between the 2008 curriculum guidelines for elementary and secondary students and the new 2013 FSL framework. Can you comment on that?
Through you, Chair. Roughly 2 months ago, we received a revised FSL curriculum for elementary schools, and it's very new to all of us, but there is more of a link between this FSL framework that has been released. We can see the Common European Framework woven throughout this new curriculum as well. So looking at this new curriculum that has been released, there is the link between the framework and this new document.
Ask you a supplementary?
Yeah.
This is a very good report, but in my mind, at least, it raises more questions than it solves answers. But I take a look at, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just going to try and revise this. I'm going to make some inferences in my own mind. So correct me if I'm wrong. One, the recommendations and expectations of the Boundary 2020 report have been met and accomplished. Check? Yes. 2, there is a new plan submitted to the ministry by the director to meet the recommendations and considerations in this report.
Yes and no. In fact, Julie may want to talk about the role that you played. That report that's gone, through you, Chair, Trustee McAllister, the report that you make is an annual report, is it not, of what we're doing?
Through you, Chair. It is. It's a 3-year plan, but looked at each year over a 3-year period.
And third, French immersion can be introduced at local schools given numbers, space, will of the community, etc. Is that another conclusion?
Yes.
Okay. I'll pass for now.
Trustee McRae?
I think I'm okay. I think pretty well asked there. Covered.
On the FSL report made to the ministry, I wouldn't get too worried about my choice of words here, but the plan progress seems rather insipid. Any comment on that? Like, why is it that insipid? Can we not do better? It just seems like we were looking at moving our graduation rate 3%. That might be a good thing to move 3% in a year, but I don't know. The French numbers seem to me that we need to move faster. So, is there a reason why we have 3 and 5 and 7% as the increases?
Through you, Chair. The full implementation of right now it's at grade 6, K to 6. Within 2 years, it will be K to 8, and then the numbers we would anticipate would start to increase. The report that's submitted to the ministry is a 3-year plan. So we are working with students, for example, in grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. We're working with similar numbers that we were working with 5 years ago.
Okay.
We would anticipate, further through you, Chair, we would anticipate, based on the recommendations, especially with capacity building in secondary and retention rate, that those numbers would go up, which would perhaps be reflected on the next report to the ministry.
Trustee McDonald?
Thank you. I just wanted to focus on retention for a second. On the slide, what number? I think it's slide, the enrollment evidence. The numbers seem to be, in grade 1, seem to be increasing. But it's a little bit all over the map, I think, right now. We had a retention from grade 6. Right now, currently is 81. We had 85 last year. It was 78, 80, 89. Seems to be dropping a little bit. There's a bit of a downward trend there. So you talked about 13% at grade 12. What's happening between grade 1 and grade 6?
Through you, Chair. I do want to be careful with the word retention. We often use that in different situations. All we've done here is simply looked at the proportion of students as they relate to the number that was originally in the grade 1 total from 2002. So the general conclusion to be drawn from this is that we start to see students leaving the French immersion program beginning in grade 7 and then more once they get into high school. And by grade 12, you can see that that number has diminished down to a significant degree.
I would agree it does move forward, but I mean, your evidence here is saying that in 2013, we had 81% of the students who started immersion, so 604 started?
No, excuse me, through you, Chair. We're looking at the 2002 number of 589. By grade 6, that number was down to 548, representing 81.5 of that original cohort.
That's your 81%?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not as bad, but they're still dropping. So I guess what you're attributing to, though, is that there's kids that leave the system for whatever reason. I mean system in the sense French immersion system.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for clarifying, yes. And that theme that keeps coming through that we've mentioned a few times, the parents choose in elementary school as the students get older, particularly as they enter their high school years, from the survey results that we did, if it's their choice, for the most part, not all, for the most part, they're choosing to switch from French immersion back to the English program.
So based on that, then, there is a need, a requirement to have a, I'm not sure what your language is called, whole language solution. Because if we looked at this if we were offering a French immersion solution singularly, then we would have students that would have to leave that particular school to be able to offer or look to core programming.
Through you, Chair, that's true. We don't have many schools that are whole school or dual track now, but Trustee McDonald, you would recognize that we do have that in 3 schools in the city of Cornwall, soon to be 4. But to clarify that, we also have a large enrollment in each of those schools, which allows both programs to be, I don't think the word is more vibrant, but easier to plan, organize, implement, and sustain for the principal and teaching staff.
Can I just ask a question on that particular, on the piece that Trustee McDonald raises? So, parent is child. I'm assuming that if a child is leaving, it could be because the child doesn't like it, which could be part of it. But from my experience, it's probably also due to the fact that the child might be struggling in one or the other and may cause them to just revert back to core. Did you look at, or do you have any anecdotal evidence, in your discussions with the principal, where is the, when does the conversation start to have them move out of immersion? Is that one of the first conversations, or is that after an extensive attempt to implement supports to support that student before they're moved out? Director?
Well, first of all, this is a historical issue. And I think that the team has put together quite an evidence-packed report to you with a great deal of surveys. And what Phil has said, what we see with kids as they get older, their peer group plays a more significant role in their decisions. And if many of their peer group are staying in FI, they move and stay with them. If they see people moving out for different reasons, they will be attracted to friends. That's not the overall arching. We still have a culture that really believes that once you experience any trouble whatsoever in school, go back to your first language. So we have a lot of teachers, a lot of parents who say, okay, we've had this long enough, now let's get the marks and so forth. We also have a culture often in our guidance departments, and where we have to go deeper is to do some anecdotal work. We got to dig in and do some surveys with our guidance people, and is the fact that many of our learning resource coaches and our so forth are so concerned about the kids moving forward that one of the first things to give in potentially is your French. And what we have to do is talk more about that and have more richer discussions and come back and take a look at it, because we need a more sophisticated answer to mom and dad that we'll pull them out of French and we'll just go to core and we'll solve the problem. I think we now know that there's a multitude of issues that could be there, and the quick knee-jerk reaction to move out or allow your son and daughter to pick by their friends is an issue we have to deal with. And through you, Chair, I would say to the team, we've not really dug deep enough into those questions yet, have we?
Trustee McRae?
Through you, Chair. I think if I can just kind of summarize, what I'm hearing is that one size does not fit all. And in fact, the different families of schools, the situations can be really quite different. And I think that, as our director has mentioned, that once they dig deeper, I mean, there's our 50 questions. If you look at this survey, that there's 50-some questions, and I would be interested in seeing some of the answers or the responses to some of those questions. Like there's a lot of questions that need to still be asked in terms of deciphering what kind of a model we're going to use as we move forward. And like I said, I don't think it's going to be a one-size-fits-all. I think you're going to see pockets within our board that are going to have to use one type of approach, and then maybe a different approach used in a rural or model. That's just what I'm hearing from the report that's given this evening. I don't know if that adds anything to it.
Trustee McPherson?
Just a question on process. I realize that the recommendations are the meat of this report. In number 3, where we support additional elementary schools with consideration of parental student interest and available school space that wish to offer whole school language instruction. So, am I correct in assuming that if you had a remote rural school where students are being bused over 3 hours a day to go to a French immersion site, that if the school showed enough interest in an early immersion program, starting at the kindergarten level, and they've got gobs of space, that consideration would be given to allowing that school to proceed with an early immersion program, subject to having available resources?
Director?
And that's just a rhetorical question.
I asked the team to join me in the answer, but there are 4 components from my perspective, and you've got a couple of them. Is there space available? Because we understand, and I think, Bill, you understand this as well as anyone, the perception that we're going to fill a school with French immersion students, we do. We take them from our own schools. Right. In fact, we know from the study that you saw 2 weeks ago that we pick up annually a large proportion of students from our coterminous board, but not at the French immersion sites. I mean, they come into our high schools and our 7-8 programs because they're very popular, but the programs, you go and you take a look at our own board, and Trustee McMillan has brought up, he has a school in his neighborhood that he's filled up twice now, and he's emptying other schools in his neighborhood. So you have to have space. You have to have an interest that is deep and rich. You have to have the will of the community saying, we're right behind this. And then the final one is, you have to look at this, can we sustain this? And by sustaining is, and we have to take a look at this, is that we have to be at the door, HR door, knocking on the door, and really attracting the most talented FI type teachers and teachers who have French as a real interest. Those 4 issues, if they're in place, there's no reason why we wouldn't move the program. Single-centered, rural or urban.
Answers my question.
Go ahead. You want to add anything?
Well, through you, Chair, thank you, Director. That's exactly right. And I just wanted to add again the reference to whole school. Because again, we're a system of small schools. So, you know, we have elementary schools that only have a capacity of several hundred students. So in most of our situations where we offer 2 programs, you're going to have very small enrollments in one of those programs. And so the idea around whole school is to make sure that all students are treated equally within that school environment. That was the lesson that we learned through the innovation of the schools that we looked at.
Through you, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
We also had a discussion when we were looking at Russell and Cambridge numbers that it was not about balancing enrollment because it was not possible, and it was about balancing program options and instruction in those schools, which they've achieved.
Trustee Karkner?
I have one concern with what we're doing right now as far as what happens to these students who are now in grade 6 and they're moving into grade 7. In reading through what the teachers have said through SurveyMonkey and what the student voice is, are we ready? Are we ready for all these immersion students coming into our secondary schools or intermediate schools? Maybe that's not a fair question. But
The Director?
I think it's a fair question.
It is.
I think it's totally fair. Not only do we have to answer your question, we have to be ready. The parents are demanding this. We've got to provide it. And it may mean it's a great deal of work, and I personally believe it can be done.
I think
It won't be easy.
I think it's a good question for you to ask of your local high school principals. I know I've done that since.
Through you, Chair.
Sounds like they're moving in the right direction. Go ahead.
It's been highlighted at previous board meetings and even tonight about kindergarten, earlier by Principal McElhairn, that we're offering AQ courses in kindergarten. Indeed, we're offering our own principal qualification courses, and that's through a partnership we have with York. It's not out of the question, and we did highlight it in one part of the report that we might want to consider offering our own AQ course, FSL. I'm not sure if anyone wants to comment on the success of the AQ, but it really has been an Upper Canada focused course, from what I understand, for kindergarten and the principal qualification program, which we could consider for FSL as well.
Over here, no, I think about that. Trustee McAllister? No? Trustee McDonald?
I wanted to go back to the retention piece. I think it's important that I want to emphasize here, we do lose students, and the reason I raised it is because I like the whole solution. The fact that we aren't going to lose students. And I don't mean lose students to other boards, it's lose students through the gaps potentially. Whether it's important or whether they're able to continue on their journey in French immersion or not, we have a program that we can offer them at that school. And I think the solution that you're looking at works well. I'm a little bit biased. I've been accustomed to it in Cornwall for quite some time, so I think it's a unique opportunity to have that, where in other centers, I think, or other districts, they don't do that. They look at the magnet school opportunity, and it's a difficult one to do. So I think where the need is, then we do that moving forward. I want to go back to one of your points, 2, I think it was, or 2, secondary schools. I think it's important that we pay some attention to that as we move forward. If we move in the direction that we want to move into as far as expanding our opportunities for delivering this program into schools where the need may exist, then I think it's worth an investment to make sure that we put the attention into the secondary component, because there is a huge investment up front on the elementary side. We have an expectation that those kids become successful. And I think it's an important factor for us to ensure that moving into high school, success doesn't mean withdrawing from a language type course. Success means we can provide resources, we can provide the necessary tools that they need to to be successful by keeping those immersion courses and still graduating to that level. And I think, you know, having an immersion certificate is one thing, and the expectation that people are officially bilingual is another thing. But if they start the journey with an expectation of having the immersion certificate, then we should make sure that we put every effort forward to do that. So I look forward to some of the information coming forward based on recommendation 2. I think recommendation 3 is good. I think there's enough evidence out there for us to be able to say, you know, school A, B, and C should have had it 6 months ago, so let's get going. So I think the evidence is there based on that. As the director said, we filled schools up twice by offering the programs in other areas, so that's pretty clear cut. So I look forward to how we proceed on that particular motion and move forward. I think us as a school board, the Upper Canada District School Board, have to offer a basic level of education. That basic level of education is core. There's a unique opportunity for us to be able to offer that immersion programming. We are seeing the needs of that increase dramatically over the years. So in order for us to meet the needs of our kids, in order for us to be successful in our communities, and ensure that we have that proper service offering for those communities, those people, by moving forward, we need to make sure that we embrace this and look at the opportunities where they exist and start to do implementation rapidly in those areas where it is evident, and then put a plan in place to make sure that we have a well-defined process for the rest of them.
Are you moving the report, adoption of the report and recommendations?
Sure.
Okay. I have a mover for the report and recommendation, seconded by Trustee McMillan.
High-tech. John's got a high-tech device there.
Okay, let's just talk about the adoption of the report and recommendations. We can always add some recommendations after, but so let's talk about the, let's focus the debate just on the motion. Are there any comments pro or against the adopting the motion? This would be sending it to board for approval. Trustee Carkman?
I guess it's too premature to ask the how for number 2.
No.
I think that that may come up. We can deal with the how in a supplementary motion if you like. Okay. In a motion after we adopt the report. And rather than moving each recommendation, I think that to some extent, if we divorce the recommendation from the report, we've lost some of what the recommendations mean. So I think it's wiser for us to adopt the report and the recommendations therein, and then we've got the whole piece together as part of the record and what we approved. And that makes sure that we have some sense, and then I think we can ask for some additional support and information if we approve this. Is there any other comments or questions about the report itself? Adopt the report. Okay, let's move forward with the question then. Then I'll open the floor up for further discussion. Trustee McCray? No? You in favor? Opposed? In favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. All right, Trustee Carpenter, you want to just develop your idea there a little bit?
Well, I think, as I said before, it's important that we are ready for our students that are coming into our intermediate secondary schools, and I would like to know how that capacity building is going to be achieved in order to maintain, not only for student retention, but just to keep the keen interest of all of the students who are coming out of French immersion schools.
there any comment on that?
I would just say, first of all, there's certainly evidence and growing evidence that the teachers, the young men and women who are coming out of our faculties want jobs. And even as they come onto our occasional list, as many enter that particular way, they are taking the AQ courses which get them work. We are full, and Ian will tell you this, our courses that appear to the kids, and I say this kids, the people going on the program, if they think that they can get a job in early childhood education, they're taking the courses. And where they see the fact that we're potentially where we're not hiring, the AQ courses are not being picked up, but the FSL will be gigantic. If this type of thing goes through, we're going to work with, and Ian's going to work with York University to have first-class instruction, and we'll have the people in the right. The kids will do that because they want the work. The other piece, going back to Trustee Carter, you're talking about, is the building capacity in our schools. Is something that Ian Carswell's talked about for 15 years, as long as I've heard in the last several years, is that our grade 9 program has to change in a sense that we have to offer it differently. We got a couple of pilots. We have one promising thing we're going to be doing at South Grenville, where a different look at a grade 9 day will look more like a grade 8 student's day, so that we have more flexibility to potentially do a block timetable that flips the French and the English together. To go back to what David has said, what can we do in the high school? And I think we're going to have to look at to answer your question about capacity, and to do this in the high schools is going to involve more than just rethinking French, but I think we have to rethink grade 9. In fact, through the chair, I would like to have Ian's opinion on this, because Ian's pretty good at this timetabling.
Sure, go ahead, Associate Director.
Yeah, I think you've hinted to the integrated nature. It's not just one subject that needs to be thrown in a different manner. We need to look at the structures that support students, not just in French language instruction, but across our curriculum. So we're working to have a more flexible, student-centered structure that will meet the demands of our students. Also looking at what does second language instruction look like in 2014. So there's some new opportunities. We've spoken about partnership and immersion experiences, also online communities. So all kinds of exciting opportunities that we need to have considered as we look at this opportunity before us.
Go ahead, Trustee Carpenter.
Follow up to what the director has said about students flocking the doors of AQ courses for French to get a job. I caution you that 25 years ago, there was a shortage of French teachers, and still are. And many teachers went that route. And the minute they could get out of the French program, they opted into the English, and it wasn't because they had a great desire to teach French.
Yes.
I worry about that happening.
Well, having been a principal in that situation, and that's where, quite frankly, we have to look at the sophisticated way that and the finesse we'll use to keep really good teachers in potentially their second language. Because, as you know, you were there, I was there, we had people who are saying, oh, they got my job, and 5 years in, then they're out. And then when you try to put them back in, they have no desire to go back in. And the secret, of course, is with good leadership, is to keep them in that position and keep them learning. But I agree with you, that'll be part of the capacity building exercise. I think we have to take a look, too, at how we build a strong collective agreement that works for both the teachers and the teachers union, and also works for the students and the board and our board of trustees. I think there's things we have to take a look on those nuances and so forth we go through. But I agree with you. We can attract them into that particular to get the job, but how do we make sure they stay there and do a great job for us? It's a very good observation.
Trustee McAllister.
Thanks, Chair. I think everybody is more or less in agreement, from what I can tell, that we have to move forward with some sort of a plan, and I think it's time to perhaps introduce a motion to that effect, which would get us that plan. And I guess the motion that I would make at the present time, one of two anyway, is that be it resolved that the director present at the April meeting, or May, whichever is preferable, a sequence of key result indicators and benchmark targets for the improvement of participation and support of French immersion in Upper Canada District School Board schools.
Schools, remove secondary. Okay. Thanks. Okay, moved, seconded by trustee Karkner. Any discussion on that motion?
So in order of, you're gonna deal with this one first, before we approve the whole report?
I thought we already voted on that.
Did we?
Yeah, we voted on that. So we've done that. So we're now on to some additional ones. I guess the only suggestion I would make, trustee McAllister, having read this again, is I think that the key result indicators are definitely in our purview, and we're asking the administration to help us develop some so we can track the progress in what I think we all agree is an important part of our programming. I guess I just wonder what benchmark targets would be, and whether that's more of a, just to keep the language going, whether that's more of a KPI and should be left in the realm of administration.
Well, I want to put it in the realm of the administration, to tell you the truth, because I think from here will emanate the plan that will result in what we want to achieve. That's the way I see it.
Okay. Trustee Buckland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In looking at this motion, I'm in favor of it. A couple of things. One, before Charlene in Williamstown had 7/8, they had the best immersion graduate record without any feeders. So we can look at situations where there is some success and harvest ideas from that. The other thing is we should be studying graduates. Now, your introduction says it will give a distinct advantage in careers. If we think of the federal government and the provincial government, certainly they're counting that as very important in a graduate. So let's see what they are demanding, and then come down to it. Let's look at what our graduates have. So I think very appropriately now would be a time to begin a study of graduates as part of this plan.
Okay. Director, any comment on the timeline in this motion?
It's tight, but I think we've, as you've seen from the group, we've been at this now for 6-7 years. I think we got a good handle on where we have to go. I just agree with you. I think we need a bit of time to figure out what would be the benchmarks and that really would tell the story that we're doing this. And there are some issues, but no, I think this is absolutely something that we can do and do a good job with.
So, may I?
Go ahead, yeah.
I mean, the request for April, is this the expectation that we would try to implement for September? Because if that's the timeline, I think it's very ambitious. If it's to look to implement later, then we need to make sure that we build it in, because I'm not sure. Here's my fear, is we try to rush something through, we get some information, and then we try to build it in the budget, we try to roll something out in September. I think I would rather see a well thought out implementation as opposed to trying to rush something and put it in place for September. And further to that, I think if we focus on what the results indicators are, then you can determine what those KPIs are as you move forward. They don't, that's going to develop as you start to put the KRIs in place.
So the motion itself reads right now, be it resolved, the director present at the April meeting a sequence of key results indicators and benchmark targets for the improvement of participation and support of French immersion in the Upper Canada District School Board schools. I don't think that I don't think that we can, maybe we need to be more explicit, but I don't think that we need to either wait until we have key result indicators before maybe we do some implementation, nor do I think that this, so I don't think that that's what it says. I think it's just something that we'll develop in tandem to, for our own selves to monitor the progress. So was that your concern?
Well, I was just trying to understand the timeline. Why April? Like,
I think it's just more for the result indicators so we can start to track. But anyway, why don't you go ahead, Trustee McAllister, since you made the motion.
If I can, Trustee McDonald, my intention is not to set the April date as a date by which we would then implement something in September. I agree with you. Let's take our time and do it right, and but at least have something in April so that we can chew on it. Get it rolling.
Through you, Chair.
KRIs would become part of the framework.
Exactly.
and I accept that. I'm just thinking of what's coming down the pipe, that's all.
So would more time be helpful?
Well, this is what I propose. First of all, we're moving into an area that we haven't been in before, but we have a really good report to build on. What I'd like to do, John, if this, through the chair, is give you a report on April of the clear direction where we're going. Because from my perspective, we got a couple places where we should hit on this in September. The whole board, no. But we have a couple places that we should learn from this. We have a couple of other places where we have low-hanging fruit. We probably can't get it for September, but it's something we should be really digging into. And going back to my answer to Trustee McPherson's query, is that we think we know we've got an Upper Canada-made solution, and in April we can tell you really the direction we're going in, and then tell you in regular reports that these will be the ways we'll be able to measure the fact that we know where we're going. So yes, I believe we can grab a couple of spots in September that we have to, and we've already been working in them. And I think what we're going to do is, as you know, we're going to build on some of the successes we had, and then we're going to come back and report on this to you. April will be really, this is the direction, and what you get at another date, if you want to put it in the motion, is probably a more robust report for November, for December.
Okay, all right. Mr. Director, we've just given you a really broad set of instructions, okay? Now, I don't know, and I don't know that the board is that interested in having it coming back and revisiting what we've already asked you to do. I think that would be, I'd almost think that would be almost that wouldn't be germane to the motion we just passed. If all of a sudden we dump on top of it the request that now, once we've asked you to do this, now you can come back and give us the implementation report. I don't know. I think that we should have thrown that in. So that's not. We have a report coming back to the trustees on the progress of the FSL plan. Okay, that we have. We've asked you to build capacity in the secondary schools to address student retention, which is what Trustee McAllister's motion essentially is getting to, and asking that you provide some KRIs. The third part that we approved was support additional elementary schools, but that's in your side now, and unless we come back and ask for some additional, maybe for you to establish a rubric or something, which I know the trustees have talked about. I don't want now to be built into this motion a request for you to come back with an implementation plan. To me, we're starting to mix things up here. Okay, so I just want to make sure that the motion that we have here is specifically asking for key result indicators to monitor the progress in building the capacity of our schools to address the student retention in FSL. Full stop. Trustee McPherson?
Somewhere, I agree with you, Greg. I think we've tagged all bases here. I think one thing that I didn't see in the report on French language is the impact that streaming has at the secondary level on French language instruction. All grade 8 students come in essentially equal. As you get further into the high school experience, you start focusing more and more on where you're going to end up. I've got one child that's full academic. I've got another one that's in the applied program. The student that's in the applied program probably has no need in some areas for French language instruction. Therefore, if they were a French immersion student, they are not going to carry it forward. So you have this splitting as you get into high school. So what impact does that have on our retention rates? The academic versus the applied stream. And so I think there's going to be a benchmark you're going to be able to hit, but you're not going to go above it because, quite frankly, it's not going to serve the needs of some of the students. So I don't know what impact the streaming has on the choice of maintaining French language instruction.
So really, I think the question is French immersion necessarily an academic program?
I believe that we've made a mistake by making it and appealing to us if it is. I can take you to several areas in Trustee Cartner's area where we have developmentally challenged kids speaking in both languages. In fact, mom's French, dad's English, and a child with some people say was limited capacity has great capacity with both languages. So I would say that what we have to take a look at, and Ian certainly addressed it, and we have to address it, is there a better way to do grade 9 so that we don't start sending kids off to different directions too early? And that would help us with French immersion. It would also help us, as Ian said, with another group of subjects as well as we go through. And I believe it was about 16 years ago we tried this once. It had really good success and then was somehow kicked off the cart. So no, I think this has been good debate, and I think we've got some real good direction to go on.
So just before I come back to you, Trustee McPherson, just so I understand, when you go to grade 9 and you do one of the, say, geography or history, I don't know which one it is, or say career studies or whatever, is that offered in an applied and an academic stream, or is that just offered as one? Anybody can answer.
When the high schools had 1,000 kids in them, you could do something of that nature. But today, the average high school in Upper Canada is 392 children, if I'm correct, David, right? But 370 to 390. We cannot do that anymore, so we have many classes that are combined as you go through. And that's just stating the truth out there, and we have to do business differently. In fact, I think you should ask Ian.
Associate Director?
So currently, it's offered at the academic level, but it doesn't have to be, and that's one of the cultural shifts that I think has to accompany this effort. Just as we saw a number of students that if they were struggling in an academic area, they would be pulled out of French language instruction. There's a rather comprehensive body of research that actually suggests that that might not be a good thing to do, that in fact, first language acquisition is supported by acquiring a second language. So there's some cultural work we need to do to stop looking at French as just something for a certain kind of student on a certain academic path. There are many uses for students to acquire second language and to have utility in workplace settings, in college, as well as university. So I think just as we've broadened our definition of what success means, success in French language has to be broadened as well.
Trustee McPherson?
So the perception out there, though, in the public, is that it's an academic program.
Yeah.
Half the parents you talk to, French immersion's for the real good students, when in reality, it is not. All is good for all. So maybe we as a board need to start dispelling the myth that this is not an academic program, that a student that is doing a full applied program could very well benefit from pursuing French immersion. And it's just, and it may be a different perspective in different areas of the board. I imagine in David's area, there's a lot of functionally bilingual families. In my area, far less so. So maybe we need to do a better job when we're promoting French immersion of saying it's not an elitist program. It's for everybody. And try to convince parents that just because Johnny's struggling in grade 3 is no reason to yank him out of the program.
Yes. Trustee McDonald?
I think we need to be cautious, because I'm not quite certain that we have evidence to say that that's what people are doing. I think there's some anecdotal evidence before, but if we see the tremendous increase of parents that are choosing French immersion, I'm not sure that I can pinpoint that to their need to be academically challenged necessarily. I think they're looking at it based on the survey results and based on my information, they're looking for that opportunity to have that increased skill set. That's really what it comes down to right now. I'm not sure that we have the evidence to support the academic picture. The other thing is, I think if we start to say that it's not that high level of rigor, then I'm not sure that it would be enticing for people to come to it as well. I mean, we're trying to say that it's an immersion program, so we're trying to build a skill set in immersion. So does that mean the French language skill is weaker at a non-academic level? I'm not certain that that's what we want to try and do. So we got to be careful on how we talk about that. And I think the evidence shows in some of your survey results that people were choosing French immersion for other reasons other than that need to be stigmatized as academic only.
Trustee McAllister?
I agree to a certain extent. I think the rigor is going to be evidenced in the ability of the students to communicate, at least orally, and if not in written, but especially oral communication. That is one of the primary targets. And I think in order to achieve that, and I hope that the director will address it in the recommendations, we have to introduce and develop more teaching and learning opportunities for students and for staff, and that means serious professional development. And I'm hoping that will play out.
Okay, so we have a motion, it's been moved, it's been seconded. Are there any comments on the motion itself? I'll read it one more time. Be it resolved that the director's asked me to change this to May at the last May meeting, he's asked. A sequence of key result indicators and benchmark targets for the improvement of participation and support of French immersion in Upper Canada District School Board schools.
Clarification from the mover. When we originally talked, it was looking at secondary schools. Are we not looking at secondary schools?
I personally, I thought of that. I left out the word secondary because, 7 and 8 is not that much different from secondary. And I think whatever is good for one level is good for all. So I think good will come from all of
it. Okay, who's my mover? Who's seconded that? Trustee Karkner. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, let's go take the vote.
That guy took a lesson from the wizard.
You need that looked into. Gotta figure that out. Why it's not working.
Jeremy, could you check to see how Trustee McAllister's using his computer?
Okay, we're not done yet, so I don't believe. Yep. It passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. So, Trustee McAllister?
Before we leave this, Chair, the report demonstrated that we were able to improve access to French immersion in our communities. But, and there is a but, and that is there has been a certain imbalance of enrollments in some schools created. There has been a concern with the retention rate of FI students, especially at the secondary level. If, I know again I'm maybe going out on thin ice, but I'm going to do it anyway. If there's a possibility of realignment, starting say with, let's just say Commonwealth, as an example, if that were to happen, what's going to be the process? I mean, there has to be some sort of a process and procedure for that to happen. So I'm going to move the following motion, Chair, that be it resolved, if there is to be the possibility of realignment to permit the introduction of early French immersion in some schools and communities, that the director be asked to develop a rubric or process to do so.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Trustee McMillan? Any comments, Director?
Actually, through the chair, Trustee McAllister, I actually began the production of the rubric in my response to Trustee McPherson. We'll put more details to that 4-point answer I gave him, because that's really where the rubric will begin. Do you have the space? Is there a will? And do we see capacity? Do we understand that it will be sustainable? And then the things, and that's where we're going to move with the rubric. And we'll give much more detail to that, but that'll be our template to say, are you ready? And I'd like to think that my earlier response to, through you, Chair, is the fact that we may have a couple places where we should be moving more aggressively, and some other places where we should spend some more time, but it'll be based upon that sort of review that you've just asked for.
Now, Trustee McAllister, if I could just ask you, the suggestion for this is in, like I think that David or the team would come up with this, but part of the reason for us in asking this, or in you asking for this, is that just to make sure that it's a public rubric, so that all stakeholders understand sort of the process involved if they their community wanted to.
That is my intention. It ought to be clear.
Yeah.
And equal for everybody.
Absolutely. Just on one.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just on one note, let's remember here the data that Phil has provided for 10 years is that we steal from our own schools to fill up our own schools, and we empty our schools. So when we have to be careful, as you know, Chair, in your own backyard, you have several principals who believe it. If they just give me FI, I'll fill my school up. And what we have to do is that must enter the form of the debate and the rubric as well.
Trustee McPherson?
I think one of the key elements here would be the fourth one, sustainability. I would hate to see a school start up a program simply because somebody thought they wanted it and not be able to maintain it. This board has always been very careful on launching projects without having sustainability. And I'm glad to see that included in it.
Any other comments? Okay. Pop the question. I do.
Pop the question.
I think Trustee Karkner, you have the final comment? You have a final comment you want to make once we finish this vote? Trustee McPherson? Just waiting on you. Okay, that passes unanimously as well. All right, Trustee Karkner?
We will be approaching budget time very soon, and I just want to let you know that I will be asking that in our budget process we consider getting some extra support for Julie. Within the board, she is our only French coordinator, and if we are increasing our French programs in the board, I think it's only necessary we provide her with the support she needs, along as maybe a second coordinator. But just to give you a heads up. Thank you.
It's not that Julie needs help.
No.
It's just that we need additional.
We don't want to burn her out.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other comments or questions? Thanks very much. We will see you again. No doubt. And thanks for undertaking that, and we spent a good amount of time on that. When did we start that item? Okay, something of little interest to the board, school budget surpluses. I was sarcasm.
Did you say of little interest?
I was sarcasm.
I just found the money.
That's why it's at the end.
Oh, gosh.
Floor is yours. Although I'm not, hey, wait a second here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I still have quorum.
It is of little interest.
It just means the 6 of us will make all the decisions. Watch what happens. All the money gets divided up amongst these 6 wards.
You're fast there.
Talk slow if that's not what you want. Yep, yeah, please. Oh darn, they're coming back.
At the January 22nd Committee of the Whole meeting where presentation was made on the 2013-14 financial pressures, one of the contributors to that pressure that was identified was an increase at the end of 12-13 of the level of school budget surpluses. So there was a request to come back to this meeting with a preliminary report on the school budget surpluses. You have it in your package. There are several appendices. The first one, Appendix B. Appendix A is a report, but Appendix B is the report of the school budget surpluses by school, by panel, at the end of August of 2013. It's sorted in order of percentage of funds available at the end of that year. So in addition to this, you will notice I have not provided any explanations as to the root causes. The director has commissioned a team and a new crew charter to spend the next little while looking at the content of these surpluses, how they came to be, and the team will be talking with school principals to talk about things like how is your budget aligned with your school success plan, were there transactions or transfers at the end of the year that you didn't have time to spend, what are your plans for the surplus, those kinds of questions. It is very likely that we will do some, have some discussions centrally as well, because funds flow back and forth between central and the schools. So that work over the next little while will help us to dig down, hopefully, to what caused the surpluses. And although we've had carryovers, and it's our policy to allow schools to carry forward surpluses, they, as I said on January 22nd, they've remained pretty constant year after year. So really weren't an issue. But given that 12-13, there was a spike in that level, coupled with the fact that the 13-14 budget was already close to that compliance threshold, which magnified the issue, that's what brought this to the fore. So the director may want to add to what I've said about the project and the team. We are kicking it off early next week at a breakfast meeting. In the meantime, finance staff are going through transactions and doing analysis in preparation to support that team. And the team will be comprised, by the way, of an elementary principal, a secondary principal, our board internal auditor, and a financial assistant, and they will be supported by the director and me to complete that work, and then we will come back with those findings.
And can you just pull that up again, the charter?
Sure.
What's the timeline on the charter? May 2014. And that's meet. You're going to be able to meet that target.
It'll be very tight.
It's important. Okay.
No, what's the team? The mandate's ready to go.
Okay, Trustee McPherson.
I need enlightenment. I know it's been a while since I've had my high school bookkeeping, but how can a surplus create a deficit? Somebody tell me how it works.
So this is with the PSAP accounting.
This is the public.
You want to explain it for us, Superintendent of Business Barclay.
Through you, Chair, Trustee McPherson, the way the PSAB accounting works to a certain extent, and certainly the way the ministry compliance rules work to a certain extent, there's a tendency to take a one-year view of a situation. So when we budgeted for 13-14, and we did it last spring, we assumed, based on historical practice, that those school budget surpluses that we allow to be carried forward would stay about the same as they had been. So in the new budget, we budgeted that that would be the level of spending in 13-14.
Right.
Because that amount ended up being greater at the end of 12-13. So that surplus that you're talking about, our policy says you can take that surplus and spend it in the next year, 13-14. But if you look at 13-14 in isolation, we didn't budget for that much because we thought the amount would be lower. So we budgeted for $1.5 million to be spent by schools from the surplus. But now they have $2.3 million that our policy would say they have opportunity to spend. But when we set the budget, we didn't allow for that extra $800,000 because that was not anticipated. That didn't help, did it?
So we've got 800,000 more than we thought we had,
Yes.
but we have a deficit.
Well, we built the budget based on it being that they could spend the 1.5.
Right.
But when the numbers came in for September 1, we discovered that it wasn't they had 1.5, they had 2.3. So we had already spent that money, the 800,000 in theory, and now we're going to have to spend it again.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I don't know if this...
Anyone else feel confused? Okay. It's basically accrual accounting versus cash accounting. In other words, with accrual accounting, you carry forward from the previous year. Cash, you declare an end of the year, and that's where you stand. So it's because we're dealing with ministry grants, like, that we're getting impacted. So,
Yes.
we budget at 1.5. Okay, I'm still working on this. Okay. Maybe I asked the wrong question, because I'm still confused.
Well, and there's also an impact by what the real spending is versus what the projected spending is, right? Because essentially we spent the money anyway, right, last year, when we balanced the books.
No, that underspending last year at the end of 12-13 fell to the bottom line as part of our surplus. And it gets tucked away into accumulated surplus. And these are accounting terms. We didn't spend that $800,000. We have that in cash. So that's the cash versus the accounting view of things. But in the new year, you have to budget your expenses. So now our budgeted expenses, just the school budgets, is $2.3 million. If you just look at 1 year, and we thought it would be 1.5. We have the cash, but in the ministry rules, you have to match the revenue and expenses in year. You can use accumulated surplus, but this is what makes it more complicated. The fact that we were at our threshold, we have more of a pressure to deal with it with current year revenues.
So they deduct a surplus from the grant level. Is that, am I getting it? No.
No, the grants each year are for a year, and that is part of the issue. So it's only, each grant is, with some exceptions, are for the year. So if we thought in 13-14 that we'd need 1.5 million, that's the incremental part for school budgets. But now we need 2.3 million. That 2.3 million has to come out of the 13-14 grants. We can't take the grants from 12-13 and move them to 13-14 like we used to be able to do.
So that is why we were trying to bring school budgets back into line with the allocation.
Well, if they stay at a consistent level, and we anticipate that they will stay at a consistent level, and we budget thinking they'll be at that level, then we don't run into the issue. But if they fluctuate, it can create pluses and minuses in the next year.
Need to have a predictable figure. Okay.
But regardless, too, like, who says 1.5 million is an appropriate amount? Like, you know, it still is. When you look at the list, it is mildly astonishing when you think of what some schools have not spent as a percentage of their budget. I mean, the average sort of hides what a small number of schools have done. It's all over the place in terms of how much they've spent of last year's budget. Trustee McDonald?
Well, just to pick up on that, and I think, you know, we need to flush it out a little bit further, but it is a little disheartening because, you know, we put more money into the school budgets back in the day to help support them, and if we find that the money is being held, then it kind of isn't really doing what we accomplished or what we were trying to accomplish. So I'm hopeful that the reports come back that we have really good reasons for this money being set aside, and then we put a process around it. But it is disheartening, though, to see that we add money to the school budget, but yet it's not being used in the areas we thought it would be.
May I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
This budgetary preliminary forecast has been really a great thing for us because it's forced us to dig into some of the sins of the ministry and us. You're the principal at such and such a school, and you're planning your year out, and then we bomb the money into you very, very late in the process, and they go, well, I had my plan all done, I got more money than I thought, what do I do? Yet we also know by nature, they're a very conservative group, and they're always worried about that we take the sick days out of this, and they're all sitting there going, well, I don't want to be over budget, and as they go through. So these are all the things that play here, and I think probably the thing that I think is the most important issue as we have scoped this particular crew charter is to say, is your budget aligned with the board's strategic plan and your school's interpretation of its school improvement plan? And what we're going to be able to go is really to answer that. We have discovered that we have to be really careful throughout the year when we're sending money so it supports their plans as well. So this has been really, and let me put this on the table. I think we're asking our principals to budget totally different, and I'll tell you, the very different than I would have as a school principal, because in the old days you sit back, well, last year I gave the athletic department $17,000, and this year I'm going to give them more money for basketballs, and I'm going down here, the drama club, they look like they're short, I'm going to increase them, I'm going to take a lot of money. That was how the budgets were done. Now we're into a situation where you saw two presentations tonight that the budget really has to support the goals and missions of the organization. We're going to come back with quite an extensive report to answer your question, Trustee McDonald, about why, when, and how can we do this better. And I think that this crisis is going to make us a little bit better. And as Covey has always said, don't ever let a good crisis go by, and we're going to make this one really work for us.
Trustee McCray.
Through you, Chair, I just wondered, just to dig a little deeper here, in terms of good practices or best practices, would like to ask a few questions. The first one being, do our principals get like a quarterly budget report so that they know that this is what was projected for that quarter and that this is their actual, this is where they are, and then they can see where they're going? Is that part of our best practice?
Superintendent of Business?
Through you, Chair, all budget owners receive a weekly report of actual versus budgeted expenses.
Well, then I guess the next question is how much training do our principals have in budgeting?
Not a lot. In fact, if you go to the principal's course, there's very little spent on this particular area. And then the aspect of budgeting as applies to strategic planning. I took the principal's course a long, long time ago. I can't remember a half hour spent on this as you go through. And what we're doing now, one of the really good things that we did, this board did approximately 2 years ago, was creating the financial assistance in the schools. And that has been, the principals will tell you, so the office administrators have been singularly a thing to build on. Now we can take it to the next level, and that's where we're going to come back with our recommendations from 2 really outstanding veteran principals saying this is where we have to move forward.
Trustee McAllister?
Chair, I think we should not lose sight of the agenda item as well as the solution to it, which is to review via the charter, and I presume that that's for information purposes. And I think it's a very measured response to the problem.
Thank you,
Trustee McPherson?
Just for my enlightenment, and looking at this list, we have some very frugal principles. What does a school budget cover? Just for my enlightenment, in case I get asked about it.
Who wants to answer that? Nancy?
Through you, Chair. Basically, it covers the resources and supplies that the school needs in their office, in their classrooms. A good portion of it is for supply teachers.
Okay.
If they have self-contained classrooms, there's an allocation for that.
What about school field trips? Is that another envelope?
Small.
There are some amounts depending upon whether, what grades they have in the schools. There are some variations for schools depending upon how many teams, et cetera, they have, but that's typically for the occasional teachers to come in.
Okay.
They need to resource in other areas as well for things like field trips.
Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair. I certainly agree with the director that a crisis like this certainly makes us better, gets us into creative problem solving, coming up with some solutions that are going to make us better. I think it also speaks volumes to the Net Promoter Score and our detractors who are saying that the amount of money our schools have is an issue. And I think this certainly says this is not the issue. If there are any times it would look like an issue, it's the communication in terms of how we're communicating with the public. They have goals, they have strategic plans that they have to address, they have directions that they're setting in the school, and perhaps when a parent gets the impression or someone from the public gets the impression the school doesn't have enough money, it's not so much they don't have enough money, it just certainly isn't in their plans at that time. So I think this speaks volumes to that as well. So it's kind of a notice to the detractors that they were not accurate on that.
Director?
Thank you for a great comment, Trustee McMillan. I don't want to presuppose the report because the team, I've met with them, I've talked to them, and we're creating the questions. But it's interesting as this report's gone out with a letter that Nancy and I created to support it. We have come across some interesting things and some behavior and some cultural issues, as Ian has sort of alluded to. We have a couple of our high schools that are still trying to run budgets and do things as if they were high schools of 700 to 1,000. And they're finding out now some really tough decisions to make. If you have done all your secondary sports teams out of the budget that the school board sends down, you're in trouble. Because when your declining enrollment goes down as birth rates go down in Eastern Ontario, you can't do what you did in 1995. And they are looking at their budgets much differently now. And this, as Trustee McMillan has said, Vice Chair McMillan, this is forcing us to really think about how we do things, and we're going to be better for it.
Okay, so I see that you're going to come back to us and report back in April or May, or is that after you finish the charter?
It's going to be after we finish the charter, but this information is going to inform the budget process.
Okay. All right, well, I'll let you inform Management Council then on when you want to bring that back. Okay, I think we're done with that, right? Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you, Superintendent of Business Barkley. I need a motion to move back into regular board meeting. Trustee McPherson and McMillan. Okay, passes. So we're back into the regular board meeting, and next item is the report from the public session. And I have a number of motions, so get your fingers ready. Guess I couldn't, we really can't just approve them all at once. Okay, so first one deals with directing the director to provide the May 2014 meeting a plan to implement the 5 recommendations within the report is which one? Remember?
Yes, it's the,
Mm-hmm.
that was the motion from the committee.
Which report was it? Does anybody remember?
It was the crew charter, the E47.
Crew Charter E47. Okay, so do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Trustee McPherson and Trustee McMillan, that the Upper Canada District School Board direct the director to provide at a May 2014 board meeting a plan to implement the 5 recommendations in the report. Recommendations within this Charter E47 report as presented at February 12, 2014. Go ahead and cast your ballots. McPherson and McMillan. Mine didn't come on ours. Okay, that passes on now to the second one, which deals with requesting a review of TR Leger program conducted by a third party. Do I have a mover and seconder? Trustee McDonald, Trustee McCray, that the Upper Canada District School Board review the TR Leger program to be conducted by a third party provider. Go ahead and take the vote. Go ahead, ask your question. Is it going to affect your vote?
Maybe. Do we have the criteria that we want them to investigate or do the study on? Or is it just wide open?
Thought we mentioned something in the agenda item.
I believe the motion was pretty wide.
Yeah.
It was in the context of the conversation, though, was around the enrollment pieces, but the view was very wide.
Okay. Well, perhaps, Lisa, you can just review that portion of the tape and pull it.
This is the motion from committee.
I understand, but maybe the context. I think there was some discussion, although it wasn't included in the motions around the report. We could just have that.
My understanding is that the Trustee McDonald has it right. It was the context of our reporting procedures.
And when they wanted to be brought back.
Yeah.
That was the timeline. They were going to discuss, administration was going to discuss the timeline.
I think if I remember correctly, I summarized sort of the broad the review. So I think if we just go back, Trustee McPherson, that passes except for Carol. She hasn't voted yet.
Okay. My impression was that we wanted it similar to the spec ed report, that we wanted to hear what was good and we wanted to hear what wasn't working. So.
Yeah, voted it.
Are you in favor, Trustee Kirkner?
Yes, I am.
Just for information for the board, I've asked Ian to head that up, and that we're looking to gain that third party that the board wants. And we're trying to scour the province right now to get the right person.
Okay, third motion, the Upper Canada District School Board prepare a report for trustees based on current impacts data for discussion September 2017. Moved by trustee Carpenter, seconded by trustee McMillan. Any comments or questions? Trustee McPherson?
I think that needs clarification as to what the report is about. I realize it's for ward boundaries, but all you're doing is you're asking a report.
Yep. I think from recollection, the idea was that the report would come and then the trustees would decide upon the next steps, actions, whether there be any changes at that time rather than waiting until.
In regards to the trustee boundaries.
Yeah. Rather than waiting until the election's in progress. Okay. All right, go ahead and take the vote.
Think we'll be around then.
Planning it.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Next, the Upper Canada District School Board maintain the current boundary structures for the 2014 election. Moved by trustee Buckland and trustee Kirkner, seconded by trustee Kirkner. Go ahead and cast your vote.
Wade would have it over by now.
Oh, it's gonna.
Everybody must be watching House of Cards. Netflix is working hard. Anybody opposed?
No.
All right, that carries unanimously. Move on now to motion number 5. This is to deal with the debenture bylaw, to do the landscaping and finance some construction at North Grenville District High School. The tune of $543,471. Mover or seconder? Trustee McPherson, trustee McCray, any comments or questions? Go ahead and
Don't start
cast your ballot. Alright, somebody's cut, oh, there it comes up. I got it, did come up. Trustee McMillan, alright, that passes too, great, thanks everyone, that concludes the report from public session February 12th. Report from SEAC.
You have my report attached. I'll just highlight a few things very briefly. We have a new chair and a vice chair, Dr. Andy Thomas and Kimberly Wright, respectively. Superintendent Edwards presented a report with regard to the hiring of 2 autism therapists. She commented on the 2,500 special education assisted devices in schools presently, the PD, professional development, and the submission of the board to the Minister's Advisory Council on Spec Ed. Chad Brownlee, Nancy Holman, and Susan Edwards presented an update on Section 23. And there is an OPSPA 2014 Summit on Children and Youth Mental Health. And I'm certainly hoping that, I will be attending as trustee liaison for this committee, but I'm hoping that we will have a team ready to go for that. And there is a new draft SEAC guide for parents, grade 8 guide for parents, guardians, and students, and the student success teams that's put together by Nancy and Chad and John Alone. Really, Chair, I think that's about it for me.
Any comments or questions? Can you, did you say you received a report on the technology? On the... Just doesn't
With
see it
regard
in
to the
here.
SIA, the
Yeah.
Special Education Assisted Devices?
Yeah.
Yes. Trustee McPherson, can you help me out here? What exactly did Superintendent Edwards report?
Okay.
She talked about the number of devices in the schools and the value of these devices and how the technology allowed for a great deal more inclusion.
So of those 2,500, how many are in use by the student that was assigned to? Do we know that?
I couldn't answer that.
We can get you an answer to that.
No, we don't. Okay. Just wondering. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you, Trustee McAllister, and pleased to hear that you have a new executive. Director McDonald, nothing to add at this point? Anything to add?
At this point, Board of Directors this weekend.
Okay. All right, that brings us, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I would like to bring to the board's attention that we're well into 2014, but what's spectacular is the early signs that our kindergarten registrations are up throughout all of the area. And I go back to some very crucial, gutsy decisions that were made last year to move ahead with our all-day kindergarten, our model, 1 year before Mr. Grieve gave us all the money for it. And it looks like it served us very, very well. Not only we held our own, it looks very promising what's happened. And I think that goes again to great leadership. We have done something 1 year in advance of the rest of the province. Is going to secure, as you may understand, when a family comes in and says they're going to register and go with you, in all likelihood that student will be with us, 95% chance they'll be with us right through to grade 12. And that not only secures jobs for teachers, it builds capacity in our schools, and that's gone very well. And I'm pleased that last year that when the difficult situation we went through with collective bargaining, as it really wasn't collective bargaining at that particular time, but that when we made our courageous decisions, are showing up again, that they're choosing our brand.
Yes, no. Okay, I don't have anything to add other than everybody have a safe and restful or productive, depending on how you like to use your March break, or a good combination. And we will see you all in a few weeks. Thanks, everyone. And John says no.
Adjournment.
For the adjournment. You don't want to adjourn?
Oh, you want to.
All right. So motion to adjourn. Trustee McMillan and Trustee McPherson. And McAllister says no. He wants to stay longer. There's a few more questions. Yeah, everybody's in favor.